wanted to do in the first two sessions, Monday sessions of our program this year, is to give everyone a framework for thinking about practice, your own personal practice, in the coming months. To take it one season at a time and to be intentional about what your commitments are for your practice for the next 3 months in the area specifically of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So I've been talking about kind of the spirit of that. Last week I talked about bodhicitta and the three treasures and kind of how they related, and I'm going to continue with that a little bit and explicate that, and then invite us to share about what our commitments might be going forward. So we'll get there. So a little bit of a review. I'm kind of assessing how many were here last week, and maybe about half of the group was here last week, so I'll do a little bit of a review. So this concept of bodhicitta, it's translated as the mind of awakening or the way-seeking mind, and it's that quality of consciousness that may arise in us at a certain point in our life that kind of really impels us to do a practice like this. And bodhicitta especially is a aspiration to awaken for the benefit not only of ourselves individually, but for all beings. And this quality of bodhicitta, as it's been identified, is what separates the early Theravadan form of Buddhism from the later Mahayana form of Buddhism. Okay, the greater vehicle. It's called the greater vehicle. Zen is a form of Mahayana Buddhism. It's in the Mahayana path, so it really does provide a path for honoring that aspiration. Yeah, I'll say a little bit more about bodhicitta. Dogen has some really interesting things to say that are right in line with his teaching. So a real pithy, powerful teaching from Dogen is that we don't practice in order to become Buddhas, we practice because we are Buddhas. So just take that in, okay? Everybody here, as with last week, has had their bodhicitta sparked. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have your bodhicitta sparked. So, can you recognize that awareness, that inquiry, actually, you could say, that brought you here, that brought you to this practice, was actually your Buddha nature itself manifesting in your life? So Dogen actually said this similarly about bodhicitta. The capacity to make the bodhisattva vow sincerely is the manifesting of Buddha nature itself, not something added from outside. So it's not just a means to enlightenment, it's enlightenment's own activity showing up as vow and practice. So when you weigh this aspiration, or whatever it is, this motivation, whatever motivation brought you here and brings you to practice, and you put it up against the other motivations you have in your life, okay? To be happy, to be successful in your job, to make money, to have a good relationship. And on and on and on. You put those together, you can really ask yourself, where do those motivations come from? What's really motivating me? Are they personal? Are they limited to being personal? Okay. So it's well worth investigating those motivations. But here you're getting a teaching, and I'm telling you, and the tradition is telling you, that the motivation that brought you here is at the absolute deepest level of what you could be, at your true nature itself. So I want to encourage, obviously, everyone to honor that from yourself. Every one of us, our paths are so unique, so unique. Even in this group, there's people who have been practicing for a few years, maybe even for a few weeks or months. There's been people who've been practicing for decades. Those of you who've been practicing for decades, maybe you went through periods where you didn't practice very much. Maybe it's been intermittent. Maybe it's been deep sometimes and weaker at other times. Some of you might have started early in your life, some of you later in your life. Okay. Whenever you started is perfect. Perfect. For you. We do not compare our paths to other people. We can't. We have profoundly different and unique karmic conditions that brought us in. So don't compare yourself to anyone else. There's no beginner and advanced in the deep, in the deepest level here. What's most important is your honoring the path and how you walk the path from your place on the path. That's the important thing. It isn't where you are on the path. The path is circular and endless. So where you are is just your scenery. I was reminded again at the end of our Enter Here retreat on Saturday. Our Enter Here retreat is the beginner's retreat, so we invite a lot of first-timers to come and explore the Buddhist forms. We're a little earlier in the year this year than usual, just the second weekend, the second Saturday of January, so people are still getting started. The CU college kids had their first day of class on the Friday before, so we only had a couple of students when sometimes we have 10 or 12 students. But I love those retreats, and many of you have come to really love those retreats too, to reconnect with that beginner's mind. And, I was reminded of my first full day that I did with Agostinelli Zen Center Los Angeles. And let's see. I'm actually I'm commenting on both the intro session I did, which was a half-day retreat without a lot of sitting. It wasn't really a retreat; it was more like an introductory session. But then a few weeks later, I did my first full day retreat. So I'm kind of combining my experience of all those. But it was life-changing for me. It was life-changing. And I shared that with the group on Saturday, and I did it at the end of the day, which I was happy to do because I didn't want to. I realized if I had said it at the beginning of the day, it might have raised the stakes a little bit too high, and everybody's looking for a life-changing experience. But it was life-changing. And one, I think the conversational part was, I can't quite put my finger on what it was that was life-changing about that. I think it was just meeting Mazumi Roshi, meeting Egyoku, who's now a Roshi, being on the grounds of the Zen Center, just recognizing that it was such a real thing, to just feel the depth of the path. And you see people who've been, doing it for decades. It's like you don't do something for decades if it doesn't work. You just don't, and that came through. But in the day that I did, I touched in to a deep peace, a deep place where there was no struggle, there was profound connection. And back in those days, I was very self-conscious, I was very shy. And that was gone, that disappeared in that day of practice. Now, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of struggle with my knees, with my body, with my, the real felt experience of the practice. It was very difficult. So at that state, there was struggle. But I touched a place of no struggle, and I touched a place of peace and a depth that I had never touched in my life before. And that was life-changing for me. So I hobbled out of that zendo on that day, and I had a knowingness that this was my path. I was going to continue doing this, for the rest of my life. I think it took me a year to a year and a half from when I started, with the practice, dabbling, started reading books and practicing on my own, and to the point where I got to that point where it was like, this is it. I actually explored a few things in this building right here prior to that retreat. I actually was in a room downstairs in this building exploring Tibetan Buddhism. It was a wonderful little intro I got with a few other people from one of the seniors here. And I liked what I heard, but Zen was it for me. Just the simplicity, the directness, the power, the artistic expression, the emphasis on the meditation was unquestionably, it for me. Just my whole body and mind lit up with my, exposure to Zen. So it took a little time for me to get to that place of this is it, but once I got it, I was really committed to the path. Now, it might not be that way for you. It doesn't have to be exactly that way for you. But I do want you to honor, what it is that brought you here. And to say that, you're in charge of your practice. You're in charge of your path. What we give you in terms of a group, a Sangha here, is a landscape of opportunity for you to navigate in your own way. Okay? And the areas that you should be thinking about in terms of your own practice are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So the components of practice, study, and community. Right? We really need all three of these. They're like three. They're kind of like three legs of a stool. You really do need all of them. Okay. And Sangha is the harmony of the practice and the study, the harmony of the Buddha and Dharma. So with Sangha, you just kind of jump in and do it together with others. Yeah, but you're in charge. You're in charge. Right? You're in charge. But I do really encourage, and I'm doing this more this year than I have in previous years, is to really encourage you to have a clear commitment about what you're going to do, what you would like to do in each of those areas, each of those three areas. And I'm going to require actually my students, if you're a student member of me, I really am going to ask you to let me know what your commitments are, just for the next 3 months, not for the whole year, in terms of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So, Buddha is the practice, right? So that's your Zazen. Zen is a Zazen meditation-focused path to investigate the Buddha Dharma. So what is your commitment to meditation? How many times a week will you come and sit with us in the morning? How many do you intend to come to Dokusan? Some people are coming 5 times a week. Some people are doing 7 days a week, I think. Is there? I don't know. There might be. I sit with the group two days a week in the mornings. So make it, what works for you. But maybe it's 1 day a week, maybe it's 2 days a week, maybe it's 3 days a week, maybe it's 4 days a week. All right? Okay. Monday nights. How many Monday nights a month can you make it to? Yeah. How many retreats? We have a retreat every month. How many? Okay. Put your mind. I tell you, when you commit to it in advance, the hard work is done. Now you just do it. Do it. That's the mind. That's the mind to bring to it. That's what works. Study. So we have a number of study opportunities. We've got some things that we've expanded this year. We've got a book group that's being done through the One Body Sangha, but also in affiliation with the Zen Center. Had the first meeting last Wednesday. I think it's actually gotten quite, what are there, 15 or 16 people?
We have 15.
Okay, so you might be, I see some of you nodding. I don't know if there's room for more people, but if, I'm going to say yes, there is room for more people, so if you're not in.
And we're early in the book. We're
book.
Going into the second and third chapter for the first Wednesday next week.
Yeah, so there's a great opportunity for study. I'm working with several people in individual study courses that I do in Dharma Dialogue, so that's a possibility too. And there's always, if you'd like a recommendation for a path of study that the opportunities available aren't quite there for you. I will often be in Dokusan, recommending a certain book to people to go into. So if there's something else that's drawing your attention, come and see me in Dokusan. And there's maybe a little private study course that I can recommend to you. We have the Zen Foundations class, which has a lot of study material on there, and that might be attractive to you too. Okay, so be intentional about what you want to do in that area. And then the Sangha area, same thing. Okay, our Mondays here have a strong Sangha component. The fourth Monday of each month is a Sangha circle, so that's a really nice experience and bonding opportunity. Can be very deep. And we'll be putting together a couple of meetings, monthly meetings, not monthly meetings, I should say, but meetings. There'll be regular meetings of those who have taken Jukai or those who would like to considering taking Jukai. So we're calling that the Living by Vow group. And we're developing that, but it's likely that we'll have 3 meetings in the course of the year. That winter, spring, and summer, and then we have a precept study class available in the fall. And then we're looking to get also a similar type of regularity to members meetings, so the group as a whole members can meet about every 3 months or so. Yeah. So those are coming together. So be intentional again about how you'd like to engage. Right? It's easy to let this, we've all got a lot going on in our lives. So it takes an effort to kind of commit and contribute to the practice. So it is easy to let it sort of slip and slide in your priorities. It's also easy to get sort of stuck in cul-de-sacs. This is my teacher, Shishin Roshi, talked about this, is that we're kind of in a stream, flying down the stream, and then how sometimes the water gets over and then there's these little eddies and whirlpools get caught over on the side of the creek, right? And if you're doing that, it appears you're moving. You got the semblance of motion, maybe the semblance of quite dramatic activity that's happening, but you're actually not. You're not advancing. So that's where the teacher and the Sangha come in to help you Get back in the main current of your practice. Right? So I have this expression that I've been saying for a few years, which is, don't fit your practice into your life, fit your life into your practice. Yeah, what do I mean by that? So we have a mind where we try to fit the practice in our life. Well, this Zen practice that I'm doing is really important to me, it's great, and I've got all this other stuff, and I've got a lifestyle. So I need to fit my practice into that lifestyle. And there's an aspect of that which is real, it is real. But if the mind, I'd like you to entertain a mind shift, which is that your practice is the main thing that's going on in your life. That's actually your lifeblood is your practice. In fact, Dogen said, this might be a paraphrase of Dogen, but he says, without bodhicitta, nothing works. And I feel that way about myself. Without my Zen practice, nothing works in my life. I can honestly say, my life does not make any sense outside of my practice, outside of the Dharma. But in the context of my practice, and in the context of the Dharma, it makes sense. I have meaning, I have purpose, I have direction, I have, let's say wisdom or insight, but I have clarity around, certain things about myself. Not that I'm all knowing and all seeing, it's just, I have clarity about myself. That's what it is, I have clarity about myself. It's the biggest, best thing to have, is that self-knowledge around what your path is all about. You don't know where you're going, you don't know how it's going to unfold, but you know the path you're on. That's the path of practice. So now fit your life into that, okay? All these beautiful, wonderful things that you have in your life, all your aspirations, all your dreams, all your relationships, all your interests, professional, relational, personal. How do they contribute to that path of awakening, of unfolding, of awakening to serve all beings? Yeah, it's wide open. There's so much possibility. Yeah. So, but this intentionality is really important. Okay, it really is, because there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff. So that commitment, make the commitment, even if you. Well, I don't want to be flippant about this, but make a commitment that might feel a little bit, edgy to you. Okay. This practice transforms everything else. It really does. It transforms everything else. So if you're kind of, well, I can only manage this much. That's really manageable. Okay. Yeah, but consider really throwing yourself in. Yeah. I'm feeling a little hesitant just talking because everybody's in your own place. I really want to reinforce that. We're all in our own unique place. So I really want you to make it your own. I feel like what I say might be perfect for one person and like really off-putting to another person, so, which is probably true, right? So the main thing I want us to really make it your own and to honor that core aspiration you have to wake up. Yeah, Dogen described bodhicitta as something that must be aroused and protected. It's not assumed as a given that it will take care of itself. Oh, okay. That's important. That's important. Yeah. So there's a continuous process of renewing the aspiration, clarifying intention, and allowing compassion to permeate ordinary activity. Yeah, that's why I'm doing it myself, and I'm asking my seniors and all of my students to be explicit about it. This isn't just for people who are in the first few years of their practice. This is for all of us. Continuously clarifying intention, protecting this aspiration which you have. Feeling into if there's anything else that wants to be said. Good. And I just want to say, I think we all realize how much things are breaking down socially. There's so much chaos and so much breakdown, and this does seem to be accelerating. And the conflict and discord and geopolitical craziness seems to be just continuing and escalating. So I think it's really important to recognize how precious this is, to be able to be on a path of practice with a community that has the intention to practice together. It is a refuge. And boy, I don't see a lot of refuge out there. I don't see a lot of refuge at this level. I personally think that there is going to be huge waves of people seeking spiritual community in the next few years. I think it's already happening. I mean, it's already happening. There's a huge upsurge in, I think, Orthodox Christianity. Mm-hmm. There's an upsurge in maybe other forms of Christianity. And I suspect that there will be, and perhaps even is, an upsurge in Buddhist participation. But I have no doubt that there will be more and more people seeking deep refuge. We have to. This is a spiritual crisis. This is a profound spiritual crisis that we're going through, and that is amplifying. Yeah, how could it not be? I mean, something like AI comes in and it's going to start to transform our entire society and do things that we never dreamed of. So these questions of who am I, what life is about, what's the meaning of life? I was listening to one really, really brilliant philosopher practitioner the other day, and he's convinced that actually we're probably going to get to a place where there's universal basic income and there's a lot of jobs, that there just aren't going to be enough actual paying jobs for people because they're not going to be needed. So there's going to be, this maybe sounds utopian, but there's reason to believe that this might actually unfold in a big way, where people don't have work to do, so there will be just a universal basic income or some kind of support for people just to live their lives. And his speculation was when that happens, there's going to be profound existential malaise as people realize, oh, what's the meaning of this life? And you might go a few weeks or a few months and get your kicks and enjoy perhaps your life, but without a real deeper meaning to your life, there could be profound waves of depression and malaise. And he was anticipating a lot of suicide that would come along with that. I don't know if that's the case. I hope not. But this is a spiritual crisis because it gets to who are we and what are we here for? Those questions are coming up big time in ways that we can't not address. So this practice gives you a framework for living out the answer to those questions. Absolutely.